My name is Mike Buckley, Vice President of Operations for Merapar Technologies USA, joined today by Chris Birkinshaw, Principal Architect, Technologist for Merapar Global. Thank you all for taking time to join us. We're going to talk about some interesting and perhaps new ways to look at legacy system migration. Chris will give some of her thoughts on the topic, and we will couple that with some real-world examples from recent Merapar engagements. Before we dig in, a short introduction to the company for those who may not be familiar with Merapar. So, Merapar is a technology consulting and software engineering and development firm with deep domain expertise in cloud and in media and entertainment workflows. Our headquarters is in Veldhoven, the Netherlands. We have offices in Poland, London, Chile, Belgium, and as of February of this year, the US. We have approximately 170 employees, and we have been steadily growing. So our technical resources consist of analysts, architects, delivery personnel, software developers who are experts in cloud-native technologies and media workflows, combined with advanced software development techniques and agile methodologies. Our clients are amongst the biggest brands in television and production and distribution. So at Merapar, every client is strategic. We're not a large management house. We're not about control. We're not about volume. We look to become trusted partners for our clients and develop long-term relationships. We're agile in our commercial approach and in our execution. We strive to reduce friction throughout the client relationship. So our client engagements focus on placing the right people on projects to maximize value. We specialize in small team engagements that start quickly and easily, progress rapidly, and end just as easily. Merapar is a trusted partner for many innovative media and entertainment companies around the world. So, Chris, welcome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I want to add that although we do work across multiple clouds, the vast majority of our media customers are all in on AWS, so it means that we have a very special partnership.
That very relevant for today's crowd. So Merapar has experience building solutions using many Amazon services, including Personalize, which allows customers to create personalized user recommendations using machine learning. Kinesis, a real-time data streaming service that can continuously capture gigabytes of data per second. We use Recognize for image recognition, scene recognition for frame-accurate cuts. We use it for regulatory requirements where required. So we're experts in designing scalable, supportable solutions in AWS. It's also worth mentioning, Merapar has recently achieved the AWS Media and Entertainment Competency, as well as the DevOps Migration, Acceleration, and Well-Architected Framework certifications. We take training and certification very seriously at Merapar, and as such, all of our consultants are AWS certified, many times over. We list our certifications and competencies on our website for anyone who's interested. We are cloud experts, and we value our relationship with AWS. Moving on. What are we talking about today, and why?
So I don't want to talk about lift and shift, because it's boring, right? But I think we should be reimagining workloads when we move to the cloud. So we should be doing it in a cost-effective way, an agile way, a cloud-native way, and also opening up to use AI-powered tools in the cloud. And I think also we need to avoid big bang migrations. I find them a bit scary, to be honest. I think we want to be doing a low risk, a gradual migration. I'm going to talk about that too. Mm-hmm. And also just a little bit about scope. Migration doesn't just mean taking a server workload and moving it into the cloud. It can also mean moving something out of like co-located hosting or SaaS, like a SaaS that you've outgrown. or even a different cloud.
Okay. What systems should we prioritize for migration?
I'm thinking about two cases, and the first one's a bit more interesting, and that's where you've got like an expansion. So let's say that you have got a service, you're running in a certain region in the world, and you want to go global. So you need points of presence closer to your customers. Cloud could be really good here. Or maybe you need to scale up and scale out. Yes, it's a success story, and you need to get more capacity to serve your customer requests. So you might not be able to do that on-prem because you might have to have like a long lead time to get servers in, or it actually might also be a problem of utilization. If you've got a load which is very, has a lot of peaks, which is very much the case for a lot of media workloads, then cloud makes a lot more sense, because if you're using cloud and you're right sizing and you're using auto scaling, so the elasticity of the cloud, then you can get a lot higher utilization than on-prem. If you bought some servers and they're only used at peak once a month for an hour, then that's quite a colossal waste of money, right? So there's a lot about efficiency here and utilization, trying to find what are the most efficient things to move into the cloud. And actually, I've got an example which is something you might not have thought of, and it's like more of an internal facing system. So I've been helping a large media client embrace continuous integration practices. And part of that is that you need to run your tests and run your builds automatically whenever there's a change. So they've gone from doing a build every night and testing all their system every night to doing it many, many times a day on every developer check-in. And that's a huge, huge increase in load. So actually what we've advised there is for them to create a hybrid cloud solution. So they have some of the build servers and the test runners still on premise, but they've also got a massive scale out now in AWS, so they can ramp up and down. And it's, this is a system which is not used all day. Gets towards the end of the day, you get a lot of check-ins. You don't get many check-ins through the night. So it's really well suited to this kind of use case. And then this second case, so I alluded to there being a less interesting case. So it's end-of-life systems. Of course, it's still really, really important. We've got to solve these problems. We've got systems which are outdated in terms of hardware or software. That's a maintenance problem. It's a security problem as well in some cases. Maybe a reliability problem. And a great example here is in the UK, we helped an organization called Everyone TV. So they run the free-to-air terrestrial and satellite services on DTT and DSAT in the UK. And they had an end-of-life system which was providing all the live TV metadata, DVB metadata into that network. And that was posing a security problem as well as a support problem. So we completely redesigned that system, moving it into AWS. And actually by doing that, we opened up a new possibility. Because in the existing solution, they had a complete replica of the system in a different site for disaster recovery. And that was always on 24/7. And in the new solution, we built a on-demand DR system using infrastructure as code and all the good automation technology that we expect from like a modern software development, right? And we could just spin it up and down when it was needed. And it's never been used in anger. So think how much money we've saved by doing that.
Exactly. That's a super useful and very interesting use case. So how do we avoid surprises in our costs when moving these systems to the cloud?
Yeah, I think we've got to really think about cost as a primary architecture dimension. And what I mean when I talk about an architecture dimension is all of these elements of the system, these properties of the system, which are non-functional. So scalability, security, maintainability. Right. These things are what architects need to think about, right, when they're designing solutions, not just does it do the task, not just the functional requirements. And this is actually a big thing for AWS because they've put cost into their well-architected framework as one of the pillars. And that's also part of the M&E audit, to make sure that when we're making architecture decisions, not just when you're designing a system at the beginning, but when you're modifying a system, because we're always adapting these systems, right?
Absolutely.
That you are always thinking about cost. And in practice, that means doing cost calculations, weighing up different architecture options and looking at the costs of the different design decisions that you might make. And also it means that, okay, well, these are estimates, right? So we all know estimates.
Estimates or estimates.
Exactly. And also things change. You know, when you're adding functionality into these systems, you are affecting the cost of the hosting. And you can really see that in the cloud because you have these cost dashboards and you can see it in real time. So you could make a small change to, say, a cloud function that was calling a database. And now you've got 2 database calls instead of 1. And suddenly you've doubled the cost of your database hosting. So you've got to be careful. So we need to continuously monitor and optimize. It's not just a one-time thing. And I'll give you an example of that. So we built a data pipeline for a UK media client on quite a large scale. They have a few million devices out in the field, in customer homes, set-top boxes, TVs, and they're all sending data back on every key press. And that generates about 1 million events per minute. And we built a pipeline using Kinesis and Lambda, and then we had Firehose in there and all that good stuff. As we added more functionality into that pipeline, the cost was creeping up. So we added in data encryption and decryption, fan out to different destinations. All these things are affecting the cost. And so every sprint, we would basically just pick up an item from the backlog, which would be focused on cost optimization. We just worked that into our way of working.
Okay.
And we were able to shave off half the cost in just a few months. And actually, one of the things which was quite surprising, which made a massive difference, was changing the batch size. So we're processing these events through a pipeline, and when we get to the processing steps, the cloud functions pull batches of these off the pipeline, then they process them and then pass them on to the next stage. And just by tweaking that, we could make a massive cost saving. And the other thing I just want to say finally is that we shouldn't just like make this new system and throw all our load onto it, because then the surprise could be quite a big shock, right?
Exactly.
So we should do it gradually. You know, why not migrate 10% of the traffic or 10% of the customer accounts and just kind of try it and see as we go and do all that real-time monitoring.
So let's take the batch change, for instance. So how difficult is that? How risky is that?
It's really easy, but it's quite risky. So the actual change to change the batch size is a one-line change if you're talking like Lambda and Kinesis. Right. But you've got to be really careful because you've got to test this thing and you've got to optimize and find the sweet spot. So what we're really trying to find is that as we increase the batch size, we're going to need more memory to process the same number of requests. But it's not a linear relationship because there's some just overheads of running the function, and right?
Right.
So we could find that we might double the batch size, but only increase the memory by 50%. And in the cloud, we're paying for the memory allocation. So we can really find that sweet spot.
Okay. So that's a very agile approach. What else can we do to migrate in an agile way? Hey, look at you.
I was thinking of my clicker. Don't look at that. So the thing I want to talk about now, actually, in terms of agile, is a pattern, and it's called the Strangler pattern. It's got a fun name.
That one in the BFF pattern?
The other fun name is the BFF pattern. It's a little bit more friendly.
Okay.
If you don't know that one, then Google it, because it's a really good one. But the Strangler pattern is based on the strangler fig, which grows up a tree, and then it eventually constricts the tree and kills the tree. A bit more dramatic. Yeah. And what we do in the Strangler pattern is we take a legacy system and we wrap it. So we put new services on the input and the output. And that's got an initial benefit because we get to perhaps bring like a new lease of life to that system because we can bring data in and get it out in new formats to new destinations, you know, makes it a lot more flexible. Okay. But what we're really trying to do here is we're getting ready to pull the innards out of this system. We're going to gut it eventually, right?
Right. And
we can carve off bits of the functionality and pull it out because we've basically created a kind of router around this thing. And we've done this quite a few times. Example I want to use actually is from a global media client, and we built a editorial CMS for them. And it was for video, and it was bolted on the side of the existing video platform. So initially, we just sucked all the data in from the existing platform, allowed editors to editorialize it a bit more, do some more targeting they couldn't do in the previous system. And then over time, that just grew and grew and grew. And then we were doing all the ingest and we were sending all the data out. And the old system was at that point doing very, very little. And that was actually an evolution that we took several years to do. And that worked out really well in that particular case.
Okay. So how do we develop faster in the cloud? I know that's an easy question with endless answers, but
I keep talking about how we don't do lift and shift, right? And the opposite of lift and shift is cloud native. So if we go cloud native and we're using more managed services, we're getting higher up the stack, then we're writing less code, right? So we're going faster. And when I talk about going up the stack, you want to imagine at the bottom we've got bare metal, and then we've got virtualization, then containerization, then function as a service. And then on top of that, perhaps you could say that we've got the managed services. And some of those are quite interesting for media. So there's the media managed services, the elemental ones like Media Convert, Media Live, Media Package. Use those quite a lot. But there are also some AI services which are specifically for media and really powerful. So Amazon Transcribe for creating subtitles, Translate for translating them, and then also recognition. So recognition's quite broad in scope now. We've used that for finding like scene markers, for ad insertion, used it for compliance checking, and also for finding like celebrities and even finding the end credits for the binge markers. So there are quite a few use cases you can do with these managed services, and you're not writing very much code.
Right. So how do we manage customer objections regarding the cost and complexity of managing the legacy system while also managing this new system?
Yeah, I think all we can do is advise, right? It's like in architecture, everything's a trade-off. There's no right or wrong answer. And by doing nothing, then you could be costing your business money too, because you're missing out on opportunities. You know, you could open up new revenue streams by migrating these systems into the cloud, and you could be missing out on that. You know, you could be inadvertently increasing your customer churn, or you could have a ticking time bomb if you've got a system that you can't really maintain. So I think it's really about weighing those things up, and there's no like one size fits all right or wrong answer.
That's fair. So how do we also ensure a long service life? What are some keys for future proofing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you're actually starting from a legacy solution, because you can jump several generations of technology. So actually, that's quite a benefit of doing it late, in a sense. And also, once you get data into the cloud, then you can be a lot more innovative. So when you've got data into the cloud, then you can start to use a lot more of these managed services. You can easily make it available to share to other departments in your organization. So I think even just getting it into the cloud is kind of future-proofing. And, you know, an example here, we made a live TV clipping service for a large broadcaster in the UK, and we had them duplicate their existing live feeds into Elemental Media Live. So they already had on-premise coders doing the same thing. So you might say, well, that's a waste of money having two.
Right.
But actually having the ones in AWS meant that we could then use that to generate these live clips, because we took the output of Media Live into Media Package. And in Media Package, you can do a live to bot harvest. You just tell it, you know, I want you to start at this time and end at this time, and it extracts it all for you and puts it into S3. So we only had to write a workflow around that, and the management UI and some business logic and that kind of stuff, monitoring. The actual heavy lifting of editing the video down was handled by the managed services. And then also, once you've got stuff into the cloud, then you can start using AI tools, because there's a lot of interesting AI tools in the cloud. And of course, Amazon and all the cloud vendors are always launching new ones all the time. A good example here actually is where we had a media client that had moved their content library into Amazon S3. That's quite a common thing to do these days, right? And once you've got your media library in S3, then you can use, and we did prototypes actually for them, you can use things like transcribe and recognition, because they take data from S3 and then process it and create metadata from video. And also, you know, all these things I'm talking about, I keep banging on about writing less code. I think that's really important for future maintainability too, because less code written now means less code to potentially migrate or to port in the future, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always good talking to you about these things and hearing what you're thinking about. So is there anything else we would go before we go into Q&A about just looking at ways to manage legacy system migrations?
I think I just want to wrap up and just to kind of reiterate that this is an opportunity to do something a little bit different and to really reimagine these architectures when you go into the cloud and to go cloud native. And that by doing this in the right way, you can open up potentially new revenue streams for your business. But I think the really important thing is to always have an eye on cost. You need to be very responsible and to make sure this part of all your decisions that you make, your technical decisions, and instill this into the ways of working of your architects and your developers. That should be part of your DNA.
Excellent. So save a few minutes for Q&A if anybody does have any questions. If not, a few points to summarize and then allow you to get back on with it. So, Dan, no questions? Excellent. So just to leave you with a few thoughts, legacy systems do hold us all back. They have a direct impact on the bottom line. There is more to legacy migration than lift and shift. Maximizing value and optimizing costs happen through careful planning and decision-making and flawless execution. Every day of delay is lost profit. Migrating legacy systems will bring real quantifiable returns to your business. Merapar can help. Dan, Alex, Jaap are all just across the way at the Merapar stand and that way. And we'd love to talk to you about it.
Great. Thank you. So I had one question before we go off, right? So that was one, thank you for the strangler pattern and the gutting. And then, yes, that was a very colorful analogy. The question I had was that as you were talking through it, we were talking about how do you de-risk a migration? So if you could go a little bit deeper into how you guys start looking at de-risking migrations, because that's a question a lot of my customers ask me is we're going to do it. What happens? It'd be really great if you give us some more color on that.
I think essentially it's about dual running, which you would do with the Big Bang migration anyway, but with the Big Bang migration, you would dual run perhaps for days or maybe a week or something. So it's really about just taking that and viewing it in a different way as an extended period. Why not dual run for 6 months, but also use the new system at the same time? So how can we do this? What does that look like? Can we have some data which is in the old system, some data which is in the new system, we merge it together? If we can't do that in the existing architecture, do we insert a layer first to be able to do that, like a BFF pattern? Do we put in Amazon API Gateway or AppSync or something like that and intercept those requests first? And then we're kind of setting ourselves up for an architecture which supports. We're creating an evolutionary architecture that we can then use to, drive these new use cases. I think it's really about kind of putting these layers and these wrappings around systems, which weren't designed for this, right? But will give us that flexibility in our migration.
Okay, and then as part of the service that you guys offer, would you be doing that work as well? Would you be managing that migration after you set it up?
It depends, what the engagement with that customer is like. So for some customers, it would just be a consulting. We come in and advise. And for other customers, we do the entire implementation.
Got it.
Or we might even augment their teams and help them do it. The clipping example, for example, the clipping example, we actually, we built the solution. Then we helped them hire. So we actually created job specs, did interviewing with them, helped them hire their team, did 24/7 support for them, and then gradually kind of pushed it over to them when they were comfortable, and then we moved out onto new things. So
got it.
A lot of different ways to do it.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I think we are about out of time, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it was great having you.
Thank you.